Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is part 3 for the Zoom recorded lecture for the topic frustration. So in part 1, we covered the rule. In part 2, we covered instances of frustration. Now we come to part 3. We are going to discuss instances of no frustration. Meaning that here, even though the parties tried to argue or tried to plead frustration, but at the end of the day, the judgment was that there's no frustration. The first one, events causing carriage of goods by sea more expensive. So it talk about, it deals with specific kinds or specific categories of contract here. The case is Sakiroglu and Company Limited and Noblitor GmbH 1962. This is a appeal case. So this case is pertaining to a sale of groundnuts, okay, and the contract involved was CIF. Okay, I put that here. What's the meaning of CIF? Basically, CIF is cost insurance freight. Okay, is to be borne, okay, by one of the parties, by the seller or even the buyer. Okay, here I think seller usually. All right, so the parties envisage shipping through the Suez Canal. But because they thought the journey, okay, the route will be through the canal. But the canal was closed after the contract was concluded. So they signed the contract first, then later only they know, oh, the canal was closed. Okay, how to ship the groundnuts. Excuse me for a while. It got stuck. Okay, sorry. Okay, all right. And then they try to argue frustration because now they cannot say, they cannot do the shipping through the Suez Canal. But the court disagreed. The court said that, well, the contract was not frustrated because why? The ship could go around via the Cape of Good Hope. And then as far as the terms of the contract was concerned, there being no implied term that carriage was to be via Suez Canal only. There could be some other route, even though it could be a longer route, and it will cost more. So the greater cost of the freight, okay, borne by CIF seller, okay, the seller is to bear the cost here, was not so great as to render this a fundamentally different adventure. It's still about the transporting the groundnuts, okay, to the buyer. So still, the contract can proceed and it's not considered as frustrated. I put there the map, okay, to show where is Suez Canal, the location. Okay, the second instance of no frustration is shortage of labor and materials in building contracts. The case is Davis Contractors Limited and Farham UDC. This is a landmark case. So this is appeal case. Appellant agreed to build 78 houses and the duration is within 8 months for the respondent. And the cost is, the agreed amount is 94 pound, okay, 94,000 pound, sorry. And then what happened later? Owing to unexpected shortage of a skilled labor, so they have a problem of shortage of skilled labor and also shortage of certain materials, the contract took longer. Instead of 8 months, okay, it is almost triple, okay, 22 months from the original 8 months, okay, to complete. And then the cost, even though it's not double up, but then the cost is increased as well. Okay, the cost was increased up to 115,000 pound sterling. And then appellant contended that there was frustration, the contractor, okay, of the contract, and he wanted to claim for quantum merit for the actual cost incurred. He wanted to claim the whole cost, okay, because payment is only for 94,000 pound. But House of Lords held that there was no frustration here. Because why? The fact that the contract became more onerous, more burdensome, okay, higher cost, right, or expensive here to the appellant did not discharge the agreement. So he cannot simply plead frustration here. The contract is still considered as not frustrated. So more onerous, more burdensome, more expensive or difficult to perform. So they are all not considered as a ground of frustration. So it doesn't fall under instances of frustration. Okay, another instance of no instance of frustration is occurrence of bad weather. Usually whenever it involves bad weather, it is also related with the defense of acts of God. Okay, because the weather, that's the relevant defense which is quoted or argued in the court. The case is Kwan San Ming and Chia Chi-hing, 1965. It involved a contract of towage, okay, to tow certain logs, okay, from one location to another. Here, from Kampung Abai to Sandakan. Actually, the suit was filed based on breach of contract as well as negligence, okay. So, and then the defense by the defendant here is that, okay, 253 logs, okay, out of 303 total were lost in a storm so violent, and this amount to acts of God, and because of that, defendant should be excused from liability for damages. So it's not liable, he's not in breach basically, because why? It happened because of the storm which was so violent. That's the argument. But the learned judge, the trial court judge here held that, yeah, we agreed there was a storm, but it was not that violent. Okay? It was not a storm so violent enough to be regarded as an act of God. In order to be accepted as acts of God, okay, here, legally speaking, okay, legal point of view, it is something which is beyond norm, okay, which is something which is extraordinary. The judge gave judgment against the defendant, so he is liable for compensation and awarded plaintiff damages based on the cost at which the lots were purchased. But defendant appealed, okay, up to federal court here, and the courts actually affirmed the decision of the lower court. The court said we are not going to interfere with the finding, and then yes, okay, the storm, whether the storm amounted to an act of God or not, is a finding of facts by the trial court. So we are not going to interfere with the findings. So the court just affirmed the decision. So the defendant lost the case basically. And then this is the important part of the judgment in the quotation. You can have a look later, but we can focus on the one that I highlighted. I put in different font. In order to satisfy the definition, okay, the event must be one which first could not have been foreseen. It's not foreseeable. And then could not have been guarded against. There's nothing that you can do in order to guard against the storm, for example. Okay. All right. And the last part there, I put in the purple font. Okay. For a storm at sea to be regarded as an act of God, okay, it would have to be a storm that could not have been reasonably foreseen in the circumstances. Because storm at sea is something which is quite, it's a norm. It's something which is normal, something which happens regularly. In order to be regarded as an as of God here, it is you have to prove, the parties have to prove, the party have to prove that, has to prove that it is something which you cannot foresee. It's something which is extraordinary. So we have another case of also pertaining to towing, towish. What's the term? Towish, I think. Okay. Towing or towish. All right, yeah. So Ku Tan Sui and Chan Chiao Hee. So the plaintiff and defendant, they had entered into verbal contract. The defendant agreed to tow the plaintiff logs from Sungai Sugut to his log pond at Sandakan. And then the number of logs to be towed, or which were towed, was 82 logs, but only 11 were delivered. So the remaining were lost actually. So because of that, plaintiff claimed damages for the loss, and defendant put up the defense of acts of God and frustration. And then it also alleged, okay, like the earlier cases now, the logs were lost in a storm at sea. So the court held that, okay, towing contract, okay, that's the name of the contract, towing contract. So the storm which was encountered was not violent enough. It actually is the similar finding. The court just reiterate this, the similar principle, the same principle. The storm which was encountered was not violent enough to be regarded as an act of God. And the court said, in a towing contract of this nature, a storm must be expected. Something which you can expect, okay? Something that you face regularly, and will have to be guarded against, and therefore that's why the defense of frustration must fail. You have to take extra precaution in order to avoid the logs from being missing, okay, from being lost basically. Another instance of no frustration is compulsory acquisition, okay, by government of small part of land. So the emphasis is on the word small part, because if compulsory acquisition by the whole part or by the by the substantial part of the land, then it might frustrate the contract. But here, only small part of the land. So the contract is considered as not frustrated. The case is Wong Siu Chung Semberhad and Amvers Corporation Semberhad, 1999. Respondent purchased a piece of land. So the measurement is measuring 9,377 square meters from the appellant. Because when they sign the agreement, and then it takes some time for all the documentations to be completed. So before completion of the sale, the government acquired a small part of the land, 1,200 square meters. So roughly around 10% of the whole area of the land, of the state land, under the Land Acquisition Act 1960. So the federal court held that because the party tried to argue frustration, but the court said the portion acquired was only a small portion of the state land, and then the contract was not really fundamentally altered by the compulsory acquisition of a minor portion of the land. The contract was not frustrated eventually. It will be different if if a big portion, a substantial portion of the land was being affected, then the contract might be frustrated in that particular situation. Another instance of non-frustration is whenever there is difficulty in interpreting the terms of the contract. Remember we discussed about whether impossible is equivalent to difficult. Usually whenever it involves difficulty, then it does not amount to frustration. The case is Pacific Forest Industries Semberhad and Lin Menchik. And there was a dispute as to the price. So the problem, the dispute is pertaining to the price that was to be fixed for the sale of the timber products. Because in the contract, it was stated as there's no fixed price. It was stated as a price consistent with the prevailing market price. So how to know prevailing market price? Because the market price might be, it's not fixed. It changes, it fluctuates. It changes from day to day. So Court of Appeal held that because the parties could not agree as to the prevailing market price, which was a fundamental term, the agreement was frustrated. But when the case was heard by federal court, the court said the agreement was not frustrated because it's still impossible to really ascertain what's the meaning of prevalent market price. It may be difficult, yes, agreed, but then it's not impossible or at all or incapable to give the proper interpretation of the term, the price, prevalent market price here. So again, impossible is not equivalent to difficult. Difficult is not equivalent to, it doesn't amount to impossibility. Okay, we stop here. In the next part, we are going to cover the test of frustration. Let me stop share. Right, thanks for listening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.